Welcome back, everyone, to day 2, week 1 of Web Fundamentals. Let's go ahead and take a look at our calendar here. We are going to be going over the box model and inline block. We're going to be also going over, we're going to do a little group activity after we're done here. We're going to present our work. And then we have the rest of the day to work on our assignments. So, all right, let's get started here. We are on the platform. Okay. So we're going to go over some CSS rules and then go over the box model. All right. So here on the platform, we have the color rule and background color. That's the rule we're going to set when creating or working with these tools. I'm going to create a new folder here so we can have a visual. Okay, so we create the HTML file. And then we create our CSS. Okay, and so what we're going to do here is play with some colors. So I'm going to create a div here. I'm going to say class equals red. And on the right hand side here, I'm going to target that class red. And I'm going to give it some height. So I'm going to say height, give me 200 pixels, width 200 pixels. So I should have a 4x4 box here. So if I take a look here.
You didn't link the CSS document to your index?
Perfect. I was testing you guys. Just kidding. So that's always important. Let's link the CSS. Link CSS. So now I have a div. And I want to give it a background color of red. So now I have a red box that's that has a height of 200 pixels and width of 200 pixels. The CSS game has got me saying pickles. All right, so I can choose any of these colors here just by naming the color. You can say magenta. And we have a magenta box. We can also select colors by the RGB, that's red, green, blue. So we can add a little bit of red, green, or blue, and that will give us the color combination that we require to see that color that we want to see. So all the pixels on our screen are a combination of red, green, or blue. Where's my here we are. So I'm going to replace magenta with RGB, green. Okay. Great. And we also have hexadecimal colors here. So green is this here. So this should be no different. Green box. Cool. I also have a Google extension. You can find one of your own or find this one here. It's called Color Picker. So if I want to get a color from a page, it's going to give me the RGB or the hexadecimal color combo. Excuse me. So here I am going to hover over. I think it has to be. I have to change the. Yeah. Now let's try it again. It's a little bit inaccurate sometimes, but if you hover over the right spot, it'll give you that color that you need. So why didn't? It's a little bit of a pain here. It's letting me down. Well, it's selecting this gray color on the background. It works. Usually works. It doesn't matter. You see here. Oh, there we go. I think it's because of the size of the page. Maybe I need to refresh it before I start. But now it's picking the green color out of there if I hover over this area. So I've copied it. Let me refresh my page and restart it after this. And now I have the code there copied. Restart this here. There we go. Okay, now it's working. I had to refresh the page after you resized it. Okay, so now it's going to pick the blue color off the page. This is a way, if you see an assignment that's giving you a color that you don't know exactly what it is, you can use this Google extension, but there's a little bit of a trick to it. You have to have the screen sized exactly the way you need it and then refresh after you do that. Okay, so there we go. You can also go into the CSS itself and you can hover over the color and change it this way. You can navigate through this color palette here, and then it'll select a color based off what you choose there. I don't know what color you'd call this. This would be like a, what type of green is this? Like a swamp green. This is more like a neon green. Okay. This is not so detailed. I mean, there's so many ways to pick colors. You don't need to know every single way. Just know that there's hexadecimal colors, red, green, blue colors, and there's named colors. So these are the primary ways that I would choose it. And then there's all these types of colors in CSS that are predefined. Let's go ahead and choose one now. So there's aqua, aquamarine, beige, black, bleached almond, brown, chocolate, cornflower blue, just all the colors on a Crayola box that you never got to play with because no one shared the box with you. So you can choose anything you'd like here. What about pale green? Let's see what this looks like. Here we go. Awesome. Okay. Let's breeze through colors. Now, what's the difference between color and background color?
Font color and just the background color. Color is just font.
Yes, sir. That's it. So, let's write an H1 in this class here. H1. And I'll say all my H1s need to be blue. That is going to target the font color. while the background color is going to target the background color. Okay, if I wanted to affect the background color of everything on the page, I would use the wildcard selector and say background color brown. And there we go. That's targeting everything, including the H1. But if I wanted to give this its specific background color, I would say background color dark khaki. That looks like a great page, doesn't it? Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about text align. Text align is going to be a useful tool for defining where the text should align on the page. So let's take a look at our page here. I'm going to remove the red div. I'm just going to comment it out here. And as you can see, when I create an H1 and I give it a background color, it stretches all the way to the end of the page. That's because an H1 is a type of tag that will take up the full width of its container. So now that I know it stretches all the way across the page, I can control now where I want the text to be within this div. I can put it into the center or to the right edge here. So if I say text align center, I'll do that on the H1 here. Text align center. Now our H1's in the middle of the page. Let's give it a bigger font size. Font size 50 pixels. And so I can also align it to the right by saying text align right. And now it's at the right, the rightmost part of the div that it's occupying. Okay. Now let's talk about text decoration here. I want this H1 to be an A tag now. So I'm just going to say A href I'll give it a placeholder destination, and then I'm going to change this here. Let's see what this looks like. Now the A tag will only take up the width necessary of the content within the A tag. So hello world is only going to occupy the space of the text, and it's also going to be the height of 50 pixels here. I made it extra large here. I'm going to take away this color blue, and here's the default color. In fact, let's take away all the background here so we can avoid this noise. I'm going to say outline 1 pixel solid red. Yeah, that's a nice little outline. Okay, so now how do we make an A tag like a regular P tag? How do we make it make this underline disappear and to make the color black? Well, we know how to change a color, so we can just say color black. And now if we look at our platform here, we see these text decoration rules. Here's text decoration. If you add text decoration underline, it will underline the text. If you add text decoration line through, it will put a line through the text. And if you say text decoration none, the default text decoration, in this case, we have an underline for a tag. If I say text decoration none, now the underline's gone. So this is how we make an A tag appear like a regular P tag by default. So now this is still a link. When I hover over, I still have that link hand. It's not going anywhere, but this here will work just the same as any A tag. It just doesn't have that visual aspect of a blue default plus an underline here. Let's add the other text decoration rules just to see what they look like. So I'm going to add text decoration line through. And we get this here.
Is that how the courses, unit, assignment checklist, stats, take exams section of the Learn platform is set up, since they're links, but they're don't have underlines on them?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Which part here? Like this section?
No, above. If you scroll all the way up to the top, those different sections.
So these would be links. Yeah. And so you can edit a link however you'd like. In this case, we want it to be underlined if this is the current link that we are occupying.
Be active, right?
Mm-hmm. Now we have a couple more rules here. If we want to make it italic, we'll say font style italic. So let's see what this looks like.
Hey, Josh, I always wanted to ask you, what's the difference between using emphasis and italic?
There's just two different ways to approach the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. No, there's no, in coding, there's no one definite way to do something. There's more than one way, always. You can one is more divorced from styling.
Yeah, so if you've got an I tag and an M tag, already you're saying I stands for italic, right? You shouldn't have any styling in your HTML. That's an HTML tag that's I, right? You're already saying it should be italic, but what if you wanted to use something else for an emphasis? In that case, you want to use EM instead. I is just like this legacy tag that's held over from the old days when I learned HTML, right? And now it's kind of been co-opted by icon libraries like Font Awesome and stuff like that. They have co-opted the I tag. And if you guys have ever worked with Font Awesome, then you'll know what I'm talking about with that I tag. It's now doesn't have anything to do with italic. It's more to do with icons these days.
Thank you, Cisa. So now we can also affect the font weight as well by using these values. So I'm gonna affect the font weight here. I'm gonna say font weight 300. Now it's a little bit thicker here. Without it, oh, hold on a second. I think it's because the font size is already large. Let's add it to, let's make it 900. There we are. That's much thicker. Okay. Now we have font families. This is how we change the font family, style. So I'll go ahead and add this here. Let's see what our text looks like now. All right. And I can go through a bunch of different font families here. Let's see if I demonstrate that. If I press the colon, it'll list me a bunch of font families that are here by default in CSS. You can also go to Google and pull some fonts from there, Google Fonts. I like the one I had before. Let's keep that one, monospace. All right. Now, let's go ahead and move along here to one of our assignments. I've seen that we worked on this. So what would we need to do here in order to get these 3 divs?
Create 3 heading tags with H1, H2, and H3.
Okay. Right. And that would occupy the whole space. And then what do we do here to change the colors?
In CSS, target each header or heading tag and set the background color to a specific color.
Right. So we change the background color. We change the font family. This case, we have a text decoration, so we can either make that H1 with the text decoration or make it a giant A tag. And then here we have a word that says my cloud. How do we get that to be 2 different colors at once like this?
Span tag.
Okay. Let's talk about the span tag. What does a span tag do?
Isolates a specific piece or set of text as defined from the overall rule of the entire tag.
Okay. Let's yes, and let's give a demonstration of this. So I'm going to add an outline to everything here. Now everything has an outline on my page. I'm going to add a P tag that says hello. And as you can see, this P tag has its own bar. It stretches all the way across the page. If I create a span tag that says hello there, this one here, let's see if I can magnify. This one here, you can see that the outline only occupies the space of the words hello there. So that's another feature of the span tag. It'll only occupy the space given. And we'll go over here what occupies the whole entire width of the given box and what it will only occupy the space there that it needs to take up. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue on with our lesson. Any questions so far? Okay, let's stop here and give a 1 through 10 on CSS properties having to do with color, text, text decoration, font width, boldness. Okay, great. So I already introduced this a little bit. The width and height. Okay, I said at the beginning, I want to make this red box here. I'm going to change it back to red. this red box has a height and width of 200 pixels. If I increase the height to, let's say, 2000 pixels, then it stretches that far. Let's make it 5 by 5. This is 500 pixels. The more you play with creating boxes on a web page, the better understanding you get of how many pixels take up the width and height on a screen. There's other ways that you can adjust the size of a div. You can adjust it by percentage, by this EM property. So let's play with percentage. Let's see what this does. I'm going to change the height percentage, or width percentage rather. So now the width is 80% of its container. The height is a definite amount. It's 500 pixels. But the width is 80% of the page that it's occupying. So the body is the container of this class red. The body is going to extend to the full width of the page. So if I close the body, it stays at 80%. There's only an 80% width there. All right, so let's add the height. Let's make it 50%. And so the space that it's occupying, when you create a div, let's demonstrate this. I'm going to say outline 5 pixels solid blue, and I'm going to comment out everything but this div. And this outline. And the width and the height. So a div class will stretch across its container. So if I say width 80%, it's going to stretch to 80%. If I say height 50%, it doesn't really affect it because it's not going to stretch to 50% of the body. Its default space that it occupies is by the content that fills it up. Okay, so just as a note, when you create a div, it'll create a line across the page. The only way we can see this is because I've given it an outline, 5 pixels solid blue. So now I'm going to fill it back up again. And we're back to using height of 50 and 80%. So it's a little bit tricky there. The width is going to stretch to 80% of its body. The height is not going to stretch to the 50% of the container class, which is the body. And let me give another demonstration here. If I say body, 5 pixels outline, 5 pixels solid red. The body is only going to stretch, the height of the body is only going to stretch by the content that is inside of it. So if there's not a lot of content in the body, the height of the body is not going to be that tall. Okay, if I add more of these red div classes or tags within the body, you'll see the body will stretch as well. Okay, that's just a side note here. So let's continue. You can also use EM as a size. So I'm going to say width 1.2 EM, and that's how much that would give me there. Let's change it to 10 EM, 10.2 EM. Now it's going to give me this much. There's just different size options that you can give here. Here's a selector that will tell you the equivalent of each size here. So for 10 pixels, it's going to be 0.625 EM. I wouldn't memorize these size comparisons. Just use pixels for now, or percentage. Is it better to practice to do REM or EM? It depends on the demands of the employer, company. You know, sometimes you'll see a standard based on the project. They'll use pixels or percentage or EM. It's not really necessary to know the differences until you're working on a project that has a standard. Okay, let's go over this overflow here. This property determines what should happen when the content inside of a container is too much for the container size. You can set the container to hide the additional information that does not fit, show that information no matter what, or have a scroll bar added to the element so the content is contained but still viewable. So let's change this A tag back to an H1. And let's say red has a height of the div that holds this H1 has a height of 300 pixels and a width of 300 pixels. Now the H1 inside of it, let's say we want to give it a height of 400 pixels. Actually, let's use a different analogy here. I'm going to create another div here called blue. And so it's a div within a div. You take this out. And I'll take away this outline. Now I'll just work on blue here. And I'll say the height of blue, let's make it equivalent of its container. With background color blue. So now the inner div is taking up the full height and width of its container. And let's read this here. This property determines what should happen when the content inside of a container is too much for the container size. Okay, so if we then make this container 400 by 400, it's too much for its container. So if we apply now overflow scroll to red, we can now scroll through this box, the outer container, to see the full height of its inner container. And to better demonstrate this, let's go ahead and write some text in here. So I'm going to say color white for the text inside. And in order to create filler text, you can say lorem. Anyone know about lorem ipsum? It's just filler text. It's like fake Latin here. So if I have a bunch of text in a div and I want to scroll through it because I want to give it a definite height and width, but the content is too much for the parent, now I can scroll through it with this rule that I've given it called overflow scroll. So now I can scroll up, down, left, right, because the insides of this div red, div class blue, are too big for its container. But if we apply overflow scroll, then we can scroll through it just like this. Okay, any questions on this so far? Okay, what if we wanted to give a background image? We can do that. You can insert the URL in this area here where it's asking for a URL. You can pull this off the internet. You can make it an image that you're containing already in your images folder. And this will let an image be the background. No repeat, fixed center. That's so if the image is not big enough for your container, instead of repeating the image over and over, it will fill up the full width of the container. It will be a fixed amount as well. So let's try doing that. I'm going to, let's do that on the body. So here we'll work on the body. And I'm going to say background this here. I have this URL that doesn't point to anything. So let's see what our page looks like. It doesn't point to anything yet. But if I pull a, let's say if I just say something like a cool background image. All right, this is something. And I'm going to copy the image address. And if I paste it here, now we have a background. So if I type something in here, hello. Let's see if we can stretch this out. I remove the fixed. It stretches it orients itself in the top. If I take away the no repeat, it'll repeat itself. And you can play with this in these rules here. This will orient it to the top left of the screen here, of the body. Okay, I want to move along here. So we have background color, background image, background position, background size, and background repeat or no repeat. I will let you guys play with this on your own. This is pretty self-explanatory. I add a little bit of these rules here. They do the same thing as what these rules are asking here. Position, background size. What if we do auto instead of fixed? Did we delete it? No, auto doesn't work in this type of rule here. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. You'll have to give it that specific rule and give it this here. So let's, why not do it? So I'm going to say background position center, background size auto. And then here, oh, that's not it. Background image URL. And then I'm just going to copy this URL here. Comment the one above. Oh, and I didn't put a semicolon here. So if I say background position, center, background size, contain, background size, cover, it'll stretch to the full width there. Background size, and then you can give it an initial size here, 1000 pixels. Now it's stretched 1000 pixels there. Okay, enough of this here. We have border, and this leans more into the box model that we're about to go over here. It's a lot like outline, but I'll show you the difference here in just a minute. So I'm going to take this here, border 2 pixels dotted green, and I'm going to apply it to, comment all of these out here. I'm going to apply it to red. So let's uncomment red. Delete the comments. Oh my gosh. Just want to comment this inside. And here, I'll paste in border 2 pixels solid dotted green. So now we have a dotted green. Let's make it a little bit bigger. 20 pixels dotted green. And now there's a dotted green border. Okay. let's give a status check on how we're feeling about all these rules. Border, background image, scroll, overflow scroll. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Now let's go over the box model. Every div that we create has multiple layers to it, whether we see it on the initial creation or not. So this div here, and we can do this by inspecting our page. So I'm going to introduce here the inspect tool. Let me refresh this here. This is the previous page we were demonstrating. If I click right click on the page and click inspect, and I drag this area up and scroll down here, we'll be able to see the same exact box model. So what you're seeing here, this order of margin, border, padding, content, you'll be able to inspect your page and view that on anything that you're working on. So for example, if I click this tool here, this square with the mouse on it, and now hover over this initial hello world, this red one, it'll tell me the dimensions. The margin has 33.5 pixels on the top and on the bottom. The edges, as you can see, when I highlight over the edge here, there is no margin left or margin right. There's currently no border. There's no padding. The content itself is 567 by 59 pixels. The margin on the top and on the bottom are 33.5. So what is margin? Margin is the space. It belongs to whatever div that you're working on, but it's going to push some spacing outside of the content. So let's go ahead and go back to our other page here. On this div red, I'm going to say margin top 50 pixels. And as you can see here, it pushed this red div down. So let's inspect it now. If I click here and I hover over this, this box model says now there's 50 pixels on the top, 50 pixels on the top here, on the top margin, but none on the edges. So this is the total margin. Now it has some default border to it, and that's the green dotted border that we've added. That's why it says 20 on all sides. That's the border that we've added. Now let's look at what padding does. I'm going to, below this margin, I'm going to say padding 40 pixels. And now our box is bigger than the dimensions we initially gave it. It's larger than a 300 by 300 box. That's because we added 40 pixels on all sides. To prove this, I will hover over this here. And now this orangey area between the purple and this border that we created, this border, this padding is 40 pixels. So when you add padding, it will stretch out the content. Think about it this way. When you get a package from Amazon, you get a big cardboard box. And you have your main content, whatever you ordered. And then if you were to open that box of the item that you ordered and you saw some padding inside that box of the item, that would be the padding. The airbags on the outside between the cardboard box and the item, that would be like the margin. It's padding outside, some space outside. Now border is another one here that we can adjust the size. This is just the frame between the padding and the margin.
So if this is like, if your package was temperature controlled, say, and then you got something cold, right? And then you have, they put that cold thing like in a styrofoam something, right? And then the actual package is insulated. Would that second styrofoam box be the padding?
If the padding is inside the main package,
Yeah, like you got your package that needs to be kept cold. So then they put that in like
yes,
a styrofoam thing, and then
yeah,
the styrofoam box goes inside an insulated package.
right. That would be more like the padding. The margin would be those airbags that they put inside the cardboard box to make sure it doesn't bang around the box.
Okay.
So it would be the space outside. It doesn't change the size of the item. Okay, so let's go over these rules. I'll just read it. Margin is outside block elements while padding is within them. This means that we use margin to separate a block from things around it and padding to move a block's content away from its edges. So we can modify the padding by saying padding top, padding right, padding bottom, or padding left. So this is the same thing here. And this is equivalent to writing the rule padding. If you say padding by itself, let's just show this, for example. I did show this. So padding, when I give it an initial number by itself, it's going to apply to all edges, top, bottom, left, and right. Right? So padding here is 40 pixels on all sides. But if I, for example, were to give it these rules, let's see what it looks like now. Oops. So I'm going to give it these rules, 4 different sizes, 25, 50, 75, 100. Now it's more of a rectangle. And as you can see here, 25 is at the top, 50 is the right, 75 is at the bottom, and 100. So it goes clockwise from the top. All 4 numbers. Top, right, bottom, left. So if I want to make the left side extra large, it still looks like a rectangle, but if we inspect it, this is the padding. This is our initial 3 by 300 by 300 box. The padding is 200 on the left, 25 on the top, 50 on the right, and 75 on the bottom. Let's give a status check. Let's get a status check on how we're understanding the difference between margin and padding. Great. Okay. We can also affect the padding by the same rules, padding top, padding bottom, right, left, or we can give this clockwise top, right, bottom, left orientation here. So let's affect the padding here, just so we see. I'm going to override this padding top rule or margin. I already affected the padding. I want to affect the margin. So let's say margin top 50 pixels, margin right 40 pixels, margin bottom 100 pixels. Oh, you need a dash between the words here. And margin left 100 pixels.
Josh,
Yes.
sorry to bother you. Can you format your code? It's really bothering me.
This here on the right.
In both of them, you have red.
This little red is bothering you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, just for you. There we go. Okay. So now if I inspect this, now we see the box model. There's 50 margin on the top, 40 on the right, 100 on the bottom, and 100 on the left. Okay. So here we have some examples of more margins affecting the content. But if we stack our content and try to affect margin, instead of what you think it would look like here of boxes stacking on top of each other, it will actually look like this. So let's read why. When the vertical margins of two elements are touching, only the margin of the element with the largest margin value will be honored, while the margin of the element with the smaller margin value will be collapsed to 0. All right, and there are other situations where elements do not have margins collapsed. We haven't talked about floated elements, but just so you know, floated elements, absolutely position elements. Don't play with this rule yet. Inline block elements, we haven't gone over what these are. Elements with overflow property, we have gone over this, set to anything other than visible, or cleared elements. So if you're ever wondering why your divs on top of each other that are stacked on top of each other are not showing the full square of margin, it's because only the margin of the element with the largest margin value will be honored. So there's some nuance to this rule.
So in that case, like if you wanted to stack those boxes on top of each other, would you do the lowest one as margin and the top two as padding instead? To get them to go all the way around?
Yeah, it depends on what the look you're to go all the way around if you wanted the same space all the way around. But again, padding is going to increase the inside. So it may not, if you're giving a definite color to the margin, or if you're expecting the margin to have a definite width, affecting the padding is going to stretch the look of the content itself. So it's going to make this red square look like a rectangle.
Okay.
I imagine there's no breaks in the CSS, is there?
No breaks. What do you mean? Like
No, the BR. The
BR tag? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's what I thought you meant. No, that's only in HTML. Okay, so let's look at this practice assignment. Here we just have 3 buttons. And we need to affect the border. And there's also a new rule we'll introduce, border radius. So what does this do? Let's affect this here. I'm going to say border radius 50%. And now we have an oval. It smooths out the edges. if I wanted to make it less, I'll say like, let's say 10%. And now the edges here are smooth on the corners. So use border radius for this assignment on this button and on the search button.
I will say for the search button, if you do %, it looks a little funky. So if you do pixels, that works better for me on just the search button. I'm not trying to give stuff away, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's good. See, now I switched it from % to pixels. And let's say it's 50 pixels. So depending on the size of the box or the div that you're working on, pixels is proportional to that size.
That makes sense.
Here's 500 pixel border radius. And yeah, good comments. Now, let's go over the difference between inline and block. This is an important topic. So we have, we may have noticed when working with our HTML that some elements allow other elements next to them to have to take all the space next to them, regardless of how much content they have. For example, the H1, the H tags, the P tags, or the divs. The ones that take up all the space are called block, and the ones that share space are called inline. So what are some inline elements that we have used so far? I've already introduced some. Does anyone remember? What about the A tag?
Inline.
Inline, or yeah, it is inline. By default, it's an inline. So here we have our A tag. And if I copy it and paste it right next to itself, then they're both occupying the same line. They're both in line with each other. But if I were to create a div, inside this div I say, hi there, and I create the same div next to it, they are block elements. They're taking up the full width. So if I inspect here, it's going to take up the full width of the body, its container.
So would an ordered or unordered list be a block element?
A list, an unordered list. Let's test it out. UL LI, and I'm going to say there's going to be 5. So times 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The UL is what?
Unordered list.
Is it inline or block?
Block.
Block, exactly. And if I click on here on the unordered list, on the inspect tool, it'll say this default rule block. What if I change it here? We'll play with this later. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so these are some examples of some inline, some block elements. So H1 is a block, H2 is a block, a label is inline, this input is also inline. And we also have this rule now called inline block. If we want our block elements to be in line, then we give it a rule called inline block. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply inline block to our H1s. Our divs here. So we're going to say, actually this would apply. So I'm going to give him class. I'm going to say class equals hi there. Let's put a dash. And if I say here now, hi there, display inline block. They are now right next to each other, just as these A tags are right next to each other. They're both on the same line.
But
And
they're
if-
still treated as blocks.
They're still blocks, but they're now called inline blocks. So they're not just like the default blocks. They're now inline blocks. This will just make block elements inline. And if I wanted to give some spacing between them, I can add the padding or margin, however I'd like. Let's comment these out for now. And I'm going to say hello there. Differentiate them. So now hi there and hello there are right next to each other because they're inline. Okay. Scrolling over this here just to give you the main content. Now, let's say we have a div here, like this white box here is the div. And we have 3 inline blocks with a background color of green, light green. We also have the width, a certain amount, 200 pixels. How can we make the smaller divs here on the left and on the right? How can we make them align to the top? Because by default, they're going to be all on the bottom here. And the rule that you need to apply is vertical align top. So let's create this here. I'm going to create these p tags. I'm going to copy it from our platform.
This might be stupid, but what if you didn't have a margin at the bottom? Would that force everything to the top?
Yeah, we can play with that as well. It's a good question. Let me just show you what vertical align does really quick here. So here we have 3 p tags. Now, because they're p tags, they're block elements, so they're going to stack on top of each other. So I have to say p, and I'm going to say display inline block. Now they should be side by side. Are there 3 there? Let's give them some color, some dimension here. I'm going to put them within a div here. I am going to format this document. Now, in this div, I'm going to say class equals p tag container. I'm going to say p tag container. I'm going to give it a width of 600 pixels and a height of 400 pixels. See what this looks like. Okay, so now if I hover over here, this p tag container that contains all three. And now let's apply these rules here. Ah, okay. So now they're all inline, but the width is not enough to make them side by side next to each other. So I have to increase the width of the p tag container. So I'm going to say width maybe 1,000. Now there we go. Okay, so now we have 3 p tags. And if I'm going to change the background color of the container. So now it's a background color of pink. Maybe I should change the height as well. Maybe, no, I'll leave the height as it is. And if I want them to be aligned to the top, all I need to say is vertical align top. Vertical align top. So now, nice. Who put that arrow? Tina. Okay. Trying on my page here. Now it's aligned to the top here. Okay. Can you take away the annotations here? Thank you. So that's how that works. If you want the inline blocks to be aligned to the top of its container, apply the rule of vertical align top. You guys are cracking me up in the comments. I'm trying to keep my composure here. All right. So what else is useful? We have blocks, inline blocks, and we have this assignment plotting our blocks. We have this given code that we'll have as a boilerplate. And we'll go ahead and add these specific rules, inline block and vertical align, to make these blocks behave. Okay, no more commenting on my page anymore. It's not funny. You go on timeout. Okay. So we are going to do some breakout assignment here. Does anyone know what the meaning of vexology means? The word vexology, what does that mean?
I think it's the like form of a flag.
Yeah, it's a study of flags. Okay, so let's go ahead and look here at the French flag. Not French flag underwear, but the French flag. If this were a web page, how would we create this? Any ideas?
3 divs inline blocked together with background colors that are different.
Yes, sir. So you have 3 inline blocks, and you can adjust the height You can adjust the border of, you can make the width of the body, or you can give it a definite height and width. So this would be an easy flag, right? Let's look at the American flag. How would we adjust? How would we make a flag? Let's pick something more less wavy. I mean, no, not going to Amazon. But okay, this is good enough. If we wanted to divide this, how would we do it? We can create a box for the blue. We can create a separate box area for these bars here. And then we have some block elements, some red, white divs. And then the bottom area here too. And what about these stars? These stars can be in their own separate rows, separated by some space here with the background color blue. So there's lots of ways to approach this. So what I'm going to do is break us out into groups, and we are going to challenge ourselves for the next hour and create different flags. Now you can create whatever flag you'd like, but I want you to challenge yourself as much as possible so that within the hour, you're able to display to the class what type of flags that your group has created. So you can pick any country. Doesn't even have to be a country. If it's a flag, you cannot use you can't use the rule float. I want you to do it without float. Just the rules that we've talked about. Block and inline block, use margin and padding. No Z index either. What else here? Yeah, just use the rules that we've given you. Block, inline block. Z index, I want to see what students can do without it. You can use margin and padding without Z index. We haven't gone over it, so I don't want to introduce rules here that we haven't touched yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and break off into groups and get this started. Get started here on creating groups.